Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time's come when we shall redeem our pledge, not wholly or in full measure, but very substantially. At the stroke of midnight hours, when the whole world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom. With these great words of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru on August 15, 1947, myself, Tushita Bhandari, welcome all the viewers. Namaskar, Vande Matram. As you know, we are celebrating the 75th year of India's independence. Countless Indians sacrificed their lives to provide us with the freedom that we enjoy today. So, on this occasion, Kalnidhi History Association is presenting this exhibition to honor those who fought and struggled for Swaraj and laid the foundation of a modern, vibrant, and inclusive democracy. Through this exhibition, we are showcasing significant events of India's historical saga to commit ourselves to ensure that the ideals of our freedom fighters and the very idea of India stay alive. The patron of this event is our Honorable Principal, Professor Sadhna Sharma Ma'am. Exhibition prepared by the students of History Honours under the guidance of Dr. Chainika Nyal Ma'am, Dr. Nimla Shah Ma'am, Dr. Ritu Bhagat Ma'am, Dr. Kirti Namika Ma'am, Dr. Sonu Kumar Sir, Mr. Vikas Malik Sir. So, let's begin with the historical journey of India's freedom struggle. Jai Hind.
Hi everyone, I Aisha Siddiq on behalf of group number 1 am here to present our PPT on 1857 revolution causes. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude towards our teachers for guiding us throughout and the Department of History, Kalnidhi, which through its initiative called Hamari Virasat, gave us the opportunity to revisit history through our research work and explore the causes of 1857 revolution. Our PPT would have never been completed without the contribution and efforts of the entire team, which constitutes the following students. Our group leader Nazreen Jahan, Nisha Sharma, Jyoti Sikri, Anita, Seema, Arshi, Sheetal and Sonia. 1857 revolution was an unprecedented event, yet an important marker in the history of British rule in India. It was a widespread but unsuccessful rebellion against the rule of British East India Company in India, which functioned as a sovereign power on behalf of the British Crown. As you can see through our first slide, we have highlighted several names by which the revolt of 1857 is known. It is called the Sepoy Mutiny by British historians, the Indian Mutiny, the Great Rebellion by the Indian historians, the Revolt of 1857, the Indian Insurrection, and the First War of Independence by Vinayak Damodar Savarkar. The reason why it is so significant is because it led to exposure of drawbacks according to Sir Lepel Griffin. The Great Rebellion immediately invited the attention of the British government in London, and the various glaring defects and shortcomings in the administration were removed. It was an effort to win over the confidence of the Indians, as well as through it a new era began. By that I mean when the leadership of India's struggle for freedom passed on to the middle class emerging from the intellectual ferment of the early 19th century, they showed preference for the orderly progress and thought wars are futile. We have given the timeline of revolt of 1857 to unleash the history and background behind it. Throughout our presentation, we have also inserted some evidences that exposes the gravity of the situation. For example, we have inserted the government of Great Britain's telegram alerting the British government to the outbreak of rebellion in India in 1857, which is a primary source. In the third slide, we have included both the causes for the 1857 revolution and the causes for its failure. For example, the political cause of the revolt were British policy of expansion through doctrine of lapse and direct annexation, which led Awadh, a loyal state, into a hotbed of discontent and intrigue. Economic causes were peasants and zamindars were infuriated by heavy taxes on land and the stringent method of revenue collection followed by the company. Social and religious causes were rapidly spreading Western civilization, abolition of practices like sati and female infanticide, Western methods of education which was directly challenging the orthodoxy. Military causes were injustices faced by Indian soldiers which led to a Sepoy Mutiny. The General Service Enlistment Act by Lord Canning in 1856 was also the reason. The immediate cause was the incident of greased cartilages of the new Enfield rifles which were greased with fat of cows and pigs. It is also when Mangal Pandey was hanged to death for refusing to use it and attacking his senior officer. Now the reasons for the failure of the Great Revolt were, in administrative reasons we can say lack of planning, absence of adequate leadership. In military reasons we can say strong opposition, absence of military forces. Ideological reasons include absence of collective mind for freedom freedom and lack of willingness of the privileged class to change. And in social reasons, we can say that there was no substitute to British rule, lesser range of the revolt, lack of participation of all the people. In the fourth slide, we have outlined some of the observations made by noted Indian and British historians. For example, according to R.C. Majumdar, the revolt was neither the first, nor it was national, and nor it was the War of Independence. According to S.B. Chaudhary, it was the first combined attempt of many classes of people to challenge the foreign power. British historian Rees observed the revolt as a war against Christianity. Lawrence and Seeley believed that military revolt was the real reason. This mind map summarizes the revolt of 1857. To make our PPT more interesting, we have added some interesting fact regarding our topic. Like the first War of Independence was not actually the first. Yeah, fellas, you read it correctly there. Revolt of 1857 is considered and taught as the first War of Independence in our history textbooks, but the fact is, it is not the first revolt. There have been many revolts prior to 1857. For example, the revolt in Bengal that occurred in 1764 and Vellore Santhal rebellion. The Chapati movement is one of the most interesting and mysterious part of the revolt of 1857. During the revolt, the chapatis were circulated by the chowkidars of the village across the villages. Though the significance or motive of this act remains a mystery till date, it is said that the chapatis consisted of some secret message. Well, it remains a mystery. At last, I would like to conclude that the modern analysis is more rational to understand. That is, different groups participated in the revolt because of the different factors, which is called differentiality of factors. For example, peasants had grievances of the land revenue system, artisans because of the loss of the artisanal mode of production, rajas and nawabs because of the loss of their state owing to expansionist policy of the British. Thus, the nature of the revolt can be summarized that there were a differentiality of factors but a commonality of interest, that is against the British and collaborators of the British. This resulted in the change of guard and the beginning of the rule of the British Parliament in India. It united, though in a limited way, many sections of Indian society for a common cause. Though the revolt failed to achieve the desired goal, but it sowed the seeds of Indian nationalism. Thank you.
Topic: non-revolutionary ideas of 1857. I, Mamta, and my team members included Karishma, Siddhi, Anshika, Richa, Lakshmi, Arzu, Drishti, and Alka. As you can see on the screen, our topic is totally related on revolutionary ideas of 1857. As you all know, it was a very important event for modern Indian history, and it was also important against the British rule. It was started from May 10, 1857 to 1858. Many parts of northern India and central India occupied under it. Bahadur Shah Zafar was appointed leader for its movement. Moving to our next slide, we can see that there are some important leader and center of 1857 revolt. Mangal Pandey from Bharakpur, Rani Lakshmi Bai from Jhansi, and Nana Sai from Kanpur, and Bahadur Shah Zafar from Delhi, and many more. As you can see the revolutionary ideas in this slide, Indian Mutiny of 1857 to 1859 was widespread but successful rebellion against the rule of British East India Company in India, which functioned as a sovereign power on behalf of British Company. Important event of modern Indian history, 19th century East India Company aim. First, to sustain its conquest, to exploit in the trade. In the period of 1757 to 1857, discontent among Indians, involvement by princely states, peasants, sepoy and tribals, etc., and also native, and the character of military revolt, and as well as the aristocratic reaction, peasant reaction, national revolution, and national war of independence. Last but not the least, as Jawaharlal Nehru said, the revolt of 1857 was more than a sepoy mutiny, although initially it started as a mutiny of Indian soldiers, but when it spread rapidly assumed the nature of mass rebellion. Thank you.
Our theme is 1857 Revolution Unsung Women. Team members Shruti, Bhavna Kataria, Isha Goyal, Ishita, Priyanka, Sanjana, Sanya Singh, Simran Yadav, and Shabana. India's revolt of 1857 was fought by many freedom fighters, and the sacrifices, hard work of some of them is known to us, while other freedom fighters remained to be unsung, especially women. Many women fighters made their mark but remained unnamed in our textbooks. So, here are some forgotten women heroes of the Indian freedom struggle of 1857. Begum Hazrat Mahal, also known as Begum of Awadh, After her husband Nawab Wajid Ali Shah had been exiled, she made her son Prince Brij Qadar ruler of Awadh, with herself as regent. During Revolt 1857, she rebelled against British East India Company and seized control over Lucknow. She raised her voice against East India Company for destroying Hindu and Muslim places of faith. She forced to retreat to Nepal after British forces recaptured Lucknow and died there in 1879. Uda Devi was a Dalit resistant warrior in the 1857 War of Independence. She headed a women's battalion in Begum Hazrat Mahal's army in Battle of Sikandrabad in November 1857. Under Colin Campbell, thousands of Indian soldiers were killed. She climbed over a peepal tree and killed more than 30 men as a sniper before being shot to death by the British forces. Jhalkari Bai was a Dalit woman warrior. She was brave right from her childhood. She resembled Rani Lakshmi Bai so much that she often disguised as queen. During 1857 revolt, Rani made her commanding officer of women wing called Durgadal. When British besieged Jhansi fort, she disguised as Rani and led the campaign with male commanders from Dantiya Gate and Unnao Gate and helped Rani Lakshmi Bai to escape. She fought fiercely, and by the time British came to know her real identity, she had killed many British soldiers and died while fighting. Rani Lakshmi Bai, also the Queen of Jhansi. After her husband's death, Lord Dalhousie sought to annex Jhansi, applying the doctrine of lapse. Under Sir Heroes, British forces arrived Jhansi fort in 1858. Rani fought against them and adamant that मैं अपनी झांसी नहीं दूंगी. Despite courageous fighting, Jhansi lost the battle. Rani, along with her son, escaped to Kalpi. She captured the Gwalior fort. Afterwards, she proceeded to Morar in Gwalior to fight against Britishers. She died while fighting in Gwalior on 18th June 1858. Rani Avanti Bai Lodhi, the Queen of Ramgarh. She was well trained in military strategies. Following the death of her husband and protesting against doctrine of lapse, she decided to take up her arms. When Revolt 1857 broke out, she raised and led an army of 4,000. Her first battle with Britishers took place in Kheri village, where she able to defeat British forces. However, stung by defeat, British came with vengeance and launched attack on Ramgarh, set it on fire and followed Rani Avanti Bai to Divhergarh. She chose to sacrifice her life rather to surrender and killed herself with her own sword. Bhima Bai Holkar was one of the earliest female warriors. On December 21, 1817, the British Army under Sir Thomas Hislop attacked Holkar army led by 22 years old Bhima Bai and 11 years old Maharaja Malhar Rao Holkar II. Britishers were about to lose the battle but were helped by Ghaffar Khan, a traitor in Holkar's camp. Bhima Bai didn't give up. She led a brigade of 2,500 cavalry and used the guerrilla warfare tactics and defeat Colonel McCallum at the Battle of Mahidpur. She died at Indore on 28 November 1858. Many other women warriors such as Azhari Begum, Azizun Bai, Habiba, Mahabiri Devi, etc. also participated in 1857 revolt. All were captured, some hanged and some were burnt alive for participating in the revolt. These are only few women warriors we mentioned, but many are still remain unnamed.
The 19th century reform movement in India played an important role in creating social consciousness and also laid the foundations of process of nation formation. I am Vinita and my team members are Kusum, Manvi Verma, Dipali, Manju, Jyotsana Kumari, Achal, Adiba and Nidhi. Let's start with these reforms during 19th to 20th century. These began in response to British policies of introducing Western English education and process of modernization. Moving towards our first slide. In this slide, we are talking about social reforms during 19th and 20th century and some important figures of that time. The various reforms during the time period were sati, infanticide, education of women, widow remarriage, etc. When we are talking about widow remarriage, how can we forget Pandit Ishwar Chandra Vidya Sagar, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Jyotiba Phule, and Dhondo Keshav Karve? They all favored widow remarriage, and Dhondo Keshav Karve himself married a widow, which was not an easy step at that time. Talking about Jyotiba Phule, he established Satyasodak Samaj in 1873 in order to spread education among lower caste women and to abolish caste system and inequalities. Let's move on to next slide. Now we are going to discuss about more social religious movements prevailing at that time. First is Arya Samaj that was founded by Swami Dayanand Saraswati in 1875. His main objective was to promote values and practices based on the beliefs of Vedas. Next is Prarthana Samaj that was founded by Atmaram Pandurang in 1867 with aim to remove caste restrictions, abolish child marriage, and encourage the education of women. Coming on to Ramakrishna Mission, founded by Swami Vivekananda in 1897 to spread the Vedanta and to improve the social condition of Indian people. Our last movement here is Aligarh movement that was a push to establish a modern system of Western style and scientific education for Muslims. The movement was started by Sir Syed Ahmad Khan between 1817 to 98. Let's see some movements against casteism now. A number of circumstances in the 19th century created class consciousness among the lower caste who took upon themselves to struggle for caste equality. Some of the movements started to erase upper class domination are Satya Sodak Samaj, founded by Jyotiba Phule, who fought against the idea of Brahmins as opportunistic invaders and greedy elites. Justice Party, founded by T.M. Nair and P. Thigaraya Shetty, which opposed Brahmins in civil service and politics, and this anti-Brahmin attitude shaped many of its ideas and policies. Next is Self-Respect Movement, founded by E.V. Ramaswamy with the aim of achieving a society in which oppressed castes have equal human rights. Last here is Sri Narayana Dharma Paripallana Yoga Movement, founded by Sri Narayan Guru against the social and economical inequality, casteism, and superstitions in the Kerala society. Not only men, but women also took equally participation in reforming society. Let us take a look on some prominent women reformers of that time. Firstly, here is Savitribai Phule. She was an Indian social reformer, educationalist, and a poet from Maharashtra. She played an important role in improving women's rights. Secondly, here is Tarabai Shinde, who was an feminist activist who protested patriarchy and caste in the 19th century India. Next is Ramabai Ranade, who was an Indian social worker and one of the first women rights activists in the 19th century. Last but not the least, here comes Fatima Sheikh, who is widely considered to be India's first Muslim teacher. So, let's end it here by some quotes and sayings by important figure of that time.
The Indian National Congress had served as an extremely important organization in the course of the Indian freedom struggle. Right from its establishment up to the last days before independence, the INC went through various stages and played numerous roles. So, here, our group comprising the members Sanjana, Diksha, Muskan, Megha, Divya, Nisha, Kajal, Tanisha, and Vanika would like to give you a glimpse of the Congress movement before Gandhi. Let us begin this informational journey. The Indian National Congress came into being on 28 December 1885 with its first session at Bombay under the presidency of W.C. Banerjee and presence of 72 delegates. The founding members were A.O. Hume, Dadabhai Naoroji, and D.E. Vacha. There are some important sessions of INC that include the 1886 Calcutta session, 1887 Madras session, 1896 Calcutta session, 1909 Lahore session. We will come across some other important sessions too as we move forward. Now we'll throw light on some of the notable leaders who made significant contributions. Dadabhai Naoroji presided over Congress sessions thrice. He was also Britain's first Asian MP. Surendranath Banerjee, a moderate who founded the Indian Association and held sessions of National Conference. He also presided over Congress sessions twice. Gopal Krishna Gokhale, who was a liberal leader, founded the Servants of India Society and had campaigned for self rule and social reforms. He was also Gandhi's mentor. Women leaders included Sarojini Naidu and Annie Besant, who also served as presidents of INC and later established Indian Women Congress and Home Rule League, respectively. There are some other major leaders that include R.C. Dutt, George Yule, Firoz Shah Mehta of the early phase, and Lokmanya Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal, Lala Lajpat Rai, Aurobindo Ghosh of the later phase. Around 1905, owing to dissimilarity in ideologies and methods, the Congress split into two, the moderates and the extremists. The moderates were liberal with their methods limited to constitutional means. They adopted prayer, petition, persuasion to demand self rule under the Britishers. Dadabhai Naoroji, Surendranath Banerjee, Badruddin Tyabji belonged here. The extremists were radical in approach and demanded complete independence from British rule. They adopted extra constitutional methods, believing in militant methods. The famous tree of Lal Bal Pal comprised this group. In view of the partition of Bengal, the Banaras session of 1905 passed resolution for Swadeshi and boycott. There was boycott of government services, foreign goods, alongside promotion of Swadeshi goods and national education. The extremists in 1906 Calcutta session gave a call for Swaraj. In the Surat session of 1907, the extremists push for Swaraj conflicted with the moderates' softer approach that caused a split in Congress. Before proceeding, let's also have a view of economic nationalism. This was introduced and propagated by Dadabhai Naoroji. In 1867, he put forward the drain of wealth theory in his book Poverty and Un-British Rule in India, where he had stated that Britain was responsible for draining India's wealth. With this, let's end the journey of Congress and move ahead with the next theme.
Be the change that you wish to see in the world. This is one of my favorite quotations by Gandhi ji. So, I am Tushita Bhandari presenting Gandhi and his life. Genuinely, I don't know how can I tell you about this person in such a short time, but yes, I'll try. Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi, who was born on 2nd October 1869 in Gujarat. Gandhi was a social reformist and leader of the Indian independence movement who introduced the idea of non-violent resistance called Satyagraha. As you can see, from his early life to the ending of his life, he worked a lot for the nation. Mahatma Gandhi launched important movements like Champaran Satyagraha, Kheda Satyagraha, Khilafat movement, non-cooperation movement, Salt Satyagraha, civil disobedience, and Quiet India movement. Movements such as Swadeshi movement, a movement for national independence in India, boycotting foreign goods and encouraging the use of domestic products. Another movement such as took place in South Africa. This is one of the most important chapter of Gandhi's life. He had successfully fought the racist regime with a novel method of mass agitation which he called Satyagraha. As part of the freedom struggle, this all shows the immense contribution of this man towards the independence. When we talk about Gandhi and his symbol, the spinning wheel. Yeah, the spinning wheel is one of the most well known and important factor when we talk about Gandhiji. He worked for the upliftment of untouchables too. Somehow he was shot dead by Nathuram Godse on 30th January 1948. There is a lot of things to discuss, to tell about him, but the time is limited and we should respect time. So I have to stop here with the famous quotation of Gandhiji. But one thing I want to mark in it, like Gandhiji was one of the most important chapter when we talk about freedom struggle. So ending here with another famous quote, nearly everything you do is one of no importance, but it is important that you do it. So thank you so much everyone for giving your attention. सरफरोशी की तमन्ना अब हमारे दिल में है, देखना ये है कि जोर कितना बाजुए कत्ल में है. With this famous quotation of Shri Ram Prasad, I would like to bring up everyone back to chapters of the revolutionary movement in India. The revolutionary movement grew out of the extremist phase of Indian nationalism The trio of Lal Bal Pal inspired the youth, but young Indian revolutionaries wanted to overthrow British rule quickly and favored the use of violence. In its first phase, the revolutionaries were active in Bengal, Maharashtra, Punjab, and Madras. In the second phase, from 1920 onwards, Bhagat Singh and many were predominant. Several movements happened at that time. These are some important ones. First one is Gadar movement. There were many revolutionary leaders, many groups and organizations that played their part in the long struggle for India's independence. The second one is Muzaffarpur and Alipur conspiracy case. Prominent revolutionaries Aurobindo Ghosh, Barindranath Ghosh, Aurobindo's younger brother, were arrested in the connection with this case. Revolutionary movement in other provinces. The Punjab government's proposal for the modification of tenures in the canal colonies and the Bari Dog had spread widespread discontent among the rural areas. Lal Chand Falak and Bhai Permanent were arrested and sentenced to imprisonment. The another movement is the revolutionary movement in Maharashtra. Maharashtra was the forerunner of the revolutionary movement in India. In Maharashtra, secret societies were formed in Pune, Bombay, Nasik, and in the processions brought out during the festivals, the volunteers used to distribute pamphlets and leaflets through which anti-British ideas were propagated. The another and the most important movement is the revolutionary movement in Bengal. It can be saw the growth of secret societies like P. Mitra's Anushilan Samiti, publications like Yugantar Sandhya, Mukti, and Vardhaman Raniti. The second phase of revolution, the virtual failure of the non-cooperation movement, and the gloom that descended on the nationalists, the scene again created conditions calling for hold and terrorist revolutionary activities. So, this is all about the revolutionary movement in India. This was such a long and amazing journey. Although there were several famous quotations too, which still developed motivation and love for the nation in natives. So, thank you so much everyone for your kind attention. Thank you.
Our theme is Bhagat Singh and his associates. Team Aditi Chaudhary, Renu, Harshita, Suprita Mishra, Vanshika Sharma, Akanksha, Himanshi, Satakshi, Soni. Bhagat Singh was an Indian revolutionary freedom fighter who was hanged to death along with his associates Sukhdev Thapar, Shiv Ram, Hari Rajguru. He is considered a national hero in India's freedom struggle against colonial rule. There were the articles which published on Bhagat Singh. भगत सिंह राजगुरु सुखदेव को फांसी, लाहौर की सेंट्रल जेल में गूंज उठी इनकलाब की बोलियां. भगत सिंह गेटिंग नेशन वाइड सपोर्ट फॉर हिज हंगर स्ट्राइक. भगत सिंह राजगुरु सुखदेव executed. They don't spare even the relatives of Bhagat Singh. Books and quotes. मैं नास्तिक क्यों हूँ? Why I'm an atheist is written by Indian revolutionary Bhagat Singh in 1930 in Lahore Central Jail. This was a reply to his religious friends who thought Bhagat Singh became an atheist because of his vanity. Bhagat Singh, the jail notebooks and the other writings he written, the diary during the September 12, 1929 to 22, 1931 march, discussing issues ranging from revolution and democracy to child labor, capital punishment. His famous quotes, "If the deaf are to hear, then the sound has to be very loud. They may kill me, but they cannot kill my ideas. They can crush my body, but they will not able to crush my spirit." There are some thoughts of Bhagat Singh. ज़िंदगी तो सिर्फ अपने कंधों पर जी जाती है, दूसरों के कंधों पे तो सिर्फ जनाजे उठाए जाते हैं. I have only one religion, that is to serve the country. मेरा बस एक ही धर्म है, अपनी देवभूमि के लिए त्याग करना. In times of great necessity, violence indispensable. Organizations made by Bhagat Singh. There were two mainly organizations, Socialist Organization and Hindustan Socialist Republican Army, with an aim to get rid of British rule in India and achieve Indian independence. Hindustan Socialist Republican Army was founded by Ram Prasad Bismil, Sachindranath Bakshi, Sanyal, Jogesh Chandra Chatterjee. Bhagat Singh mainly was one of them. Movements: Reds bomb blast Indian legislature following sharp parliamentary crisis causes injury to many. On 8 April 1929, revolutionaries Bhagat Singh threw bomb at central Delhi at Bhagat Singh getting national wide support for his hunger strike in protest of the prejudiced difference in treatment of the white versus native prisoners and demanded to be recognized as political prisoners. Bhagat Singh and his associates. Bhagat Singh associates also play a great role in Indian independence, who hanged up to death along with Bhagat Singh. Sukhdev Thapar was an Indian revolutionary, a senior member of Hindustan Socialist Republican Army. He participated in several actions alongside Bhagat Singh and Rajguru, which hanged by British authorities. Shivram Hari Rajguru was an Indian revolutionary from Maharashtra known as mainly for his involvement in assassination of British police officer named John Saunders. भगत सिंह राजगुरु सुखदेव को फांसी लाहौर में जेल में गूंज उठी इनकलाब की बोलियां.
Good morning, respected teachers and students. We, the students of second year history honors, are here to present a PowerPoint presentation on Indian National Congress and women. The foundation of Indian National Congress was laid on the auspicious date of 28 October 1885 at Gokuldas Tejpal Sanskrit College in Bombay, under the chairmanship of Umesh Chandra Banerjee. Although due to the outbreak of cholera in Pune, the first session was moved to Bombay, with 72 delegates from all provinces of India attended the first session, which also included 54 Hindus, 2 Muslim members, and many members of Jain and Parsi community. The first president of the session of Indian National Congress was Umesh Chandra Banerjee. There were other eminent figures who also attended the first Congress meeting, in such as Dadabhai Naoroji, Deshna Vacha, William Wedenberg, Firoz Shah Mehta, and many others. Women during the time emerged as leaders of Indian National Congress. To call women the weakest sex is a liability. It is men's injustice to women. Many powerful and influential women leaders and great figures such as Nellie Sengupta, Sarojini Naidu, Annie Besant, who was also the first woman president of Indian National Congress, emerged as leaders and demanded mainly for women education, development, and political participation. These great faces built a strong and undaunted foundation for active political participation of women in organization. Many other great women personalities such as Annie Besant, who presided over 1917 session of Calcutta and became first woman president of Indian National Congress, was also a sociologist, theosophist, social reformer and advocate of Indian self-rule. Moving ahead with Sarojini Naidu, who presided over the 1925 session in Kanpur, a poet, women rights activist and a freedom fighter. She had a multifaceted contribution to Indian society and freedom movement. The great contribution given by Nellie Sengupta cannot be forgotten, who presided over the Calcutta session in 1933 and was a prominent English woman who fought for India's independence. She did a great job in selling khadi products door to door and supporting her husband in the movement. At last, it means woman has been regarded as strong sex and powerful in every sector, while moral power or sacrifices or independence. Without her, man could not be successful to help India gain its freedom. If the non-violence is the law of our being, the future with women I have nursed and thought of now for years, said by the great Mahatma Gandhi. Politics in India have never been considered a woman's field, but at later phase we have some strong female figures in Indian politics we are proud of to have, such as the great ladies working for India's future in political field. Later, under the leadership of Gandhi Nehru, women were enriched within the organization in politics as well as struggle of Congress for freedom. And post-independence contribution of the assembly stepped forward and made legal right in the equal measure. Now in the 21st century, we know that women can play equal role in each and every field they step in. With this, I would like to end our presentation.
Revolutionary movement and women. The history of women's movement in India, especially during the freedom struggle, is unique in many ways. It served two purposes. One was to contribute to the cause of freedom from British rule, while the other was to impress upon their countrymen and upon the foreign government the urgent need for social, economic, legal, and political reform to improve the lives of women in the subcontinent. While discourse surrounding the freedom struggle has not entirely discounted the role of women, it has certainly not given enough recognition to women in the proportion to their integral roles in the war against British. The women were not merely passive workers following in the footsteps of celebrated men, they were active revolutionaries, taking up arms, launching underground organizations, publishing anti British literature, being subjected for years to torture and imprisonment. Now we are going to tell you about such courageous stories of some revolutionary women who fought for our nation. Sushila Mohan, popularly known as Sushila Didi, she was born on March 5, 1905 in the Punjab province of colonial India to an army doctor. It was during her student days that Sushila Didi came in contact with the revolutionary movement. She was part of a group that went to Dehradun to participate in a Hindi literature convention where she met a few students of the Lahore National College who were engaged in revolutionary activities. Later, she met Bhagwati Charan Vora and Durga Devi Vora and joined the revolutionary group. During her stay in Kolkata, she formed a group of revolutionary women led by Subhash Chandra Bose protesting against the Simon Commission. Later, this group of women activists formed the Bhagat Singh Defense Committee and collected funds for the undertrials of the Lahore and Delhi conspiracy cases. After the hanging of Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev, and Rajguru, and the death of Chandrasekhar Azad on February 27, 1931, the HSRA was in complete disarray. It was during this time that Sushila Didi took command of the organization in Delhi and Lahore and planned the assassination of Sir Henry Kirk, the Secretary of Punjab government. After independence, Sushila Didi started handicraft school for women in Ballimaran neighborhood of Old Delhi. She primarily worked in Delhi colonies and trained hundreds of women in small handicraft technology. She also served as a member of Delhi Municipal Corporation for a brief period and was the president of the Delhi Congress Committee. Madam Bikaji Kama. March forward, we are for India, India is for Indians, said by Madam Bikaji Kama. She was a woman of heroic integrity and conviction, the mother of India's freedom struggle, born in September 1861 to an affluent Parsi family. Bikaji believed in Swaraj for India. On August 21, 1907, an international socialist conference was being held at Stuttgart, a city in Germany. 1,000 representatives from across the world had come to attend the conference. It was on this occasion that Bikaji Rustam Kama unfurled the first version of Indian national flag, a tricolor of green, saffron, and red stripes. The fairy lady then announced, "This is the flag of independent India. I appeal to all gentlemen to stand up and salute the flag." Surprised by the dramatic incident, all the representatives at the conference stood up and saluted the first flag of independent India. Madam Kama had wanted to bring the poverty, starvation, and oppression under the British Raj, as also India's thirst for freedom, to the attention of international community. She had succeeded. In 1896, bubonic plague broke out in Bombay Presidency, and Bikaji immediately volunteered to help the team working to save plague victims. Hundreds were dying in Bombay, and Bikaji too caught the deadly disease. Though she recovered, the disease left her in poor health. An unsung name among the stalwarts of Indian independence struggle, Madam Bikaji Kama's conviction, courage, and integrity took the message of Indian freedom struggle to the world with a force and clarity it had never had before. As the fairy lady had once declared, do not forget the important role women play in building a nation. The history of Indian freedom struggle would be incomplete without mentioning the contribution of women. The sacrifice made by the women of India will occupy the foremost place. They fought with the true spirit and undaunted courage and faced various tortures, exploitations, and hardship to earn us freedom. When most of the men freedom fighters were in prison, the women came forward and took charge of the struggle. The list of great women whose names have gone down in history for their dedication and undying devotion to the service of India is a long one.
Topic Non-Cooperation Movement. I am Ankita and my team members includes Anukriti, Anupriya, Jayashree, Babita, Seema, Tanu, Lakshmi, Tina. Just our topic further in the presentation. During 1920 to 22, the Indian national movement entered a new phase of mass politics. The British were opposed through non-cooperation movement under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi through technique of non-violence and boycott. Our first slides describe the background and how the Rowlatt Act in 1990 led to hartals and demonstrations against it. British brutality at Jallianwala Bagh, killing thousands, shocked the nation. Moving on to our next slide, also Khilafat's wrong laid groundwork for non-cooperation. Muslim support was gained by Mahatma Gandhi and this period showed remarkable Hindu-Muslim unity. Nagpur Congress declared non-cooperation and Swaraj as its goals. Some important leaders were Jawaharlal Nehru, Mahatma Gandhi, Motilal Nehru, M.R. Jayakar, Lala Lajpat Rai, C.R. Das, Sarojini Naidu, Basanti Devi. Here is fact about Basanti Devi. Basanti Devi was the first woman to be arrested during non-cooperation protest. Moving on to our next slide, we can see now non-cooperation lead to boycott of foreign goods, popularization of charkha and khadi, and the nationalization of education. Last but not the least, the movement ended with the Chauri Chaura incident in Gorakhpur, UP, Uttar Pradesh on February 4, 1922. A large group of protesters was fired upon by the policemen stationed at Chauri Chaura. This infuriated the demonstrators who then set fire to the police station. 22 policemen were cheered to death. The British government, realizing the Mahatma Gandhi's position had been weakened on the account of his suddenly calling of the non-cooperation movement, arrested him in 1922 March and he was sentenced to 6 years of imprisonment. Thank you.
Civil disobedience, सविनय अवज्ञा आंदोलन. Team members Lakshmi, Priyanka, Aarti, Koina और निक्की. सिविल डिसओबीडियंस सविनय अवज्ञा आंदोलन की भूमिका में कहा जा सकता है कि गांधी जी ने 1920-21 में ब्रिटिश सरकार के विरुद्ध असहयोग आंदोलन शुरू किया, जिसे 1922 में वापस लेना पड़ा. 1927 में साइमन कमीशन की नियुक्ति ने सविनय अवज्ञा आंदोलन की भूमिका तैयार की. इससे पहले 1920 में बारदोली सत्याग्रह सरदार वल्लभ भाई पटेल के नेतृत्व में सरकार द्वारा 30% कर के विरोध में चलाया गया था. 1929 में भारतीय राष्ट्रीय कांग्रेस द्वारा लाहौर अधिवेशन में पूर्ण स्वराज्य का लक्ष्य रखा गया. 31 दिसंबर 1929 को रावी नदी के तट पर तिरंगा फहराया गया. 6 अप्रैल 1930 को सविनय अवज्ञा आंदोलन शुरू हो गया. सविनय अवज्ञा आंदोलन का मुख्य उद्देश्य गैर कानूनी कार्य सामूहिक रूप से करके ब्रिटिश सरकार को झुकाना था. आंदोलन शुरू करने से पहले गांधी जी ने सरकार से समझौता करने के प्रयास में 11 सूत्रीय मांगे पेश की और कहा यदि इन्हें मान लिया जाए तो आंदोलन करने की ज़रूरत नहीं होगी. 11 सूत्रीय मांगों में से कुछ इस प्रकार थी: नमक कर और सरकार का नमक पर एकाधिकार समाप्त किया जाए, सरकारी बड़ी बड़ी नौकरियों का वेतन आधा किया जाए, सेना खर्च में 50% की कमी की जाए, भारतीय कपड़ा और जहाजरानी उद्योग को संरक्षण दिया जाए, सभी राजनीतिक कैदियों को रिहा किया जाए. सरकार पर इन मांगों का कोई प्रभाव नहीं पड़ा. गांधी जी ने इस पर कहा, मैंने घुटने टेक कर रोटी मांगी थी, बदले में मुझे पत्थर मिला. अंत में उन्होंने आंदोलन शुरू कर दिया.
इस आंदोलन की शुरुआत दांडी यात्रा से हुई। 12 मार्च 1930 को महात्मा गांधी और उनके 78 कर्मचारी कार्यकर्ता साबरमती आश्रम से दांडी समुद्र की ओर चल पड़े। इसमें 200 मील की लंबी यात्रा पैदल चलकर 24 दिन में तय की गई। सुभाष चंद्र बोस ने दांडी यात्रा की तुलना नेपोलियन के पेरिस और मुसोलिनी के रोम अभियान से की है। पंडित जवाहरलाल नेहरू के शब्दों में इसे कहा गया है, जैसे जैसे दिन प्रतिदिन जनता इस सत्याग्रही जनता का साथ देती गई, देश में उत्तेजना का भाव बढ़ता गया। गांधी जी तथा उनके साथी 5 अप्रैल 1930 को दांडी पहुंचे और 6 अप्रैल को उन्होंने समुद्र के पानी से नमक बनाकर नमक कानून का उल्लंघन किया। इस प्रकार हजारों लोगों ने अलग अलग स्थान पर नमक बनाया। मुस्लिम लीग के नेता मोहम्मद अली जिन्ना ने इस पर कोई भी प्रतिक्रिया नहीं की। सविनय अवज्ञा आंदोलन में महिलाओं ने बड़ी संख्या में भाग लिया। दांडी यात्रा के आखिरी दिन सरोजनी नायडू इसमें शामिल हुई तथा उनके साथ लाडो रानी जुत्सी, कमला नेहरू जैसी 1600 महिलाओं ने नमक सत्याग्रह में भाग लिया। अलग अलग स्थानों पर नमक कानून तोड़कर नमक बनाया गया। विदेशी वस्तुओं का बहिष्कार कर कर उन्हें जलाया गया और लोगों ने सरकार को टैक्स देने से मना कर दिया। सरकार ने इस आंदोलन के दमन के लिए कांग्रेस को गैर कानूनी संस्था घोषित कर दिया। लोगों को जेल में डाला गया और दांडी यात्रा के बाद सरकार ने आंदोलन को बुरी तरह से कुचल दिया। सविनय अवज्ञा आंदोलन के प्रभाव के रूप में ब्रिटिश सरकार ने विभिन्न राजनीतिक दलों से बातचीत करने के लिए गोलमेज सम्मेलन बुलाने का फैसला किया। पहला गोलमेज सम्मेलन 12 नवंबर 1930 को इंग्लैंड में हुआ, जिसमें कोई भी भारतीय नहीं गया। दूसरे गोलमेज सम्मेलन में गांधी जी ने पूर्ण स्वतंत्रता की मांग की, जिसे ब्रिटिश सरकार ने स्वीकार नहीं किया। तीसरा गोलमेज सम्मेलन 1932 में हुआ। इसमें भारतीय मूल अधिकारों और गवर्नर जनरल अधिकारों पर प्रतिबंध की मांग की गई। इस पर सरकार ने कोई ध्यान नहीं दिया और यह भी असफल रहा। जब सरकार आंदोलन को दबा नहीं पाई तो उसने समझौता करना चाहा। 1 जनवरी 1931 में गांधी जी और अन्य नेताओं को जेल से रिहा कर दिया गया। इसी वर्ष गांधी इरविन समझौता स्वीकार किया कि वह सभी और इसके अंतर्गत कुछ मांगे रखी गई और सरकार ने स्वीकार किया कि वह अब अध्यादेशों व मुकदमों को वापस ले लेगी तथा अहिंसात्मक आंदोलनकारियों को रिहा कर देगी। लोगों को बिना कर दिए नमक बनाने की अनुमति दी गई। इस प्रकार सविनय अवज्ञा आंदोलन 1933 तक धीरे धीरे कम हो गया और अंततः 1934 में यह आंदोलन पूरी तरह से वापस ले लिया गया। धन्यवाद।
भारत छोड़ो आंदोलन 14 जुलाई 1942 को वार्धा में कांग्रेस की कार्यकारिणी समिति ने अंग्रेजों भारत छोड़ो आंदोलन का प्रस्ताव पारित किया। 8 अगस्त 1942 को अखिल भारतीय कांग्रेस की बैठक मुंबई के ग्वालियर टैग मैदान में हुई और भारत छोड़ो आंदोलन के प्रस्ताव को मंजूरी मिली। भारत छोड़ो आंदोलन को अगस्त क्रांति के नाम से भी जाना जाता है। ब्रिटिश गवर्नर जनरल लॉर्ड लिथंगो ने द्वितीय विश्व युद्ध में बिना भारतीयों के मशविरे के भारत को द्वितीय विश्व युद्ध में शामिल कर दिया। नेताजी सुभाष चंद्र बोस ने जापानियों की मदद से इंडियन नेशनल आर्मी का गठन किया, जिसका लक्ष्य भारत को अंग्रेजों से मुक्त कराना था। मुस्लिम लीग के नेता मोहम्मद अली जिन्ना ने द्वितीय विश्व युद्ध में अंग्रेजों का साथ दिया, क्योंकि वे एक अलग देश पाकिस्तान बनाना चाहते थे। कांग्रेस कार्य समिति ने सितंबर 1939 में वार्धा में फांसीवाद के खिलाफ युद्ध और बदले में स्वतंत्रता के लिए प्रस्ताव पारित किया। भारत में मार्च 1942 को क्रिप्स मिशन को भारत भेजा गया, जिसका उद्देश्य द्वितीय विश्व युद्ध में भारतीयों का सहयोग करना था। क्रिप्स मिशन ने तत्काल स्वशासन और बदले में स्वतंत्रता की पेशकश की। द्वितीय विश्व युद्ध में भारत के प्रवेश पर उसकी प्रतिक्रिया पर कांग्रेस विभाजित हो गई, लेकिन क्रिप्स मिशन असफल हो गया। युद्ध के परिणाम स्वरूप बढ़ती कीमतों और ज़रूरी वस्तुओं के अभाव के कारण जनता में असंतोष था। ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में भी लोग परेशान हो रहे थे, क्योंकि उपभोक्ता सामग्री विकराल हो गई थी। वार्धा में कांग्रेस कार्य समिति की बैठक ने ब्रिटिश सरकार से स्वतंत्रता की मांग करते हुए एक प्रस्ताव अपनाया। ये ऐतिहासिक सम्मेलन मुंबई के ग्वालियर टैग मैदान से संपन्न हुआ। 8 अगस्त 1942 की ग्वालियर टैग मैदान मुंबई अधिवेशन की बैठक
में गांधी जी ने कहा कि इस आंदोलन का आधार अहिंसा हो, प्रत्येक व्यक्ति अपना मार्गदर्शन करे। गांधी का संदेश था कि करो या मरो, अर्थात स्वतंत्रता प्राप्त करो या मरो। एक व्यवस्थित ढंग से ब्रिटिश वापसी का संदेश दिया तथा हिंदू मुस्लिम एकता पर बल दिया गया। 9 अगस्त को महात्मा गांधी, मौलाना अबुल कलाम आज़ाद आदि प्रतिष्ठित नेताओं को गिरफ्तार कर लिया गया। अखिल भारतीय कांग्रेस को अवैध घोषित कर दिया गया और उस पर प्रतिबंध लगा दिए गए। जनसभाओं के जमा होने पर, चर्चा करने पर प्रतिबंध लगा दी। गांधी और कांग्रेस नेताओं की गिरफ्तारी के कारण पूरे भारत में बड़े पैमाने पर प्रदर्शन होने लगे। आंदोलनकारियों ने अंग्रेजों के प्रति विरोध को सरकारी संपत्ति नष्ट करने, पुलिस थानों पर कब्जा किया। यह आंदोलन बाद में एक आतंकवाद का रूप ले लेता है। प्रमुख नेता के जेल चले जाने के बाद नेतृत्व के अभाव में लोगों के बीच से नेतृत्व उभरा। अरुणा सफली ने 9 अगस्त 1942 को ग्वालियर टेक मैदान में तिरंगा फहराकर आंदोलन को गति दी, तो जयप्रकाश नारायण, राम मनोहर लोहिया, अच्युत पटवर्धन इत्यादि नेताओं ने भूमिगत रहकर आंदोलन को नेतृत्व प्रदान किया। गांधी जी ने महिलाओं को भारतीय स्वतंत्रता के अनुशासित सैनिकों के रूप में संदर्भित किया। उषा मेहता ने भारत छोड़ो आंदोलन में सूचना प्रसारित करने के लिए वॉइस ऑफ फ्रीडम नामक एक रेडियो ट्रांसमीटर की स्थापना की। राजकुमारी अमृता कौर ने मुख्य कार्य क्षेत्र शिक्षा के माध्यम से महिलाओं तथा हरिजन समाज को सशक्त बनाया। सरोजिनी नायडू भारत में हिंदू मुस्लिम एकता की प्रमुख समर्थक थी। उत्तर प्रदेश में बालिया, बंगाल में तामलुक, महाराष्ट्र में सतारा, कर्नाटक में धारवाड़ और उड़ीसा में तलचर व बालसोर में लोगों द्वारा अस्थायी सरकार की स्थापना की गई। इस आंदोलन में मुस्लिम लीग खुद को अलग रखना चाहती थी, क्योंकि वह नहीं चाहती थी कि भारत बिना बंटवारे के आज़ाद हो जाए। हिंदू सभा के कट्टर समर्थकों ने भारत छोड़ो आंदोलन का खुलकर विरोध किया। इसका कहना था कि ये हिंदुओं के न्यायोचित अधिकारों के लिए नहीं है। भारतीय कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी ने इसका पुरजोर विरोध किया, क्योंकि द्वितीय विश्व युद्ध में ब्रिटेन, संयुक्त राज्य अमेरिका, सोवियत संघ और चीन नाज़ावादियों के खिलाफ युद्ध कर रहे थे। देसी रियासतें और राजे रजवाड़े ज़्यादातर देसी रियासतें और राजे रजवाड़े इस आंदोलन में भाग नहीं लेना चाहते थे और वो यहाँ तक कि ब्रिटिश सरकार की मदद तक कर रहे थे, क्योंकि वह नहीं चाहते थे कि आज़ादी के बाद उनका अस्तित्व खत्म हो जाए। राष्ट्रीय स्वयंसेवक संघ ने भारत छोड़ो आंदोलन का आधिकारिक समर्थन नहीं किया, क्योंकि इनका मानना था कि सत्ता का धुरी बिंदु केवल और केवल हिंदू होने चाहिए। ये पहले हिंदुओं को संगठित करके आज़ादी लेना चाहते थे।
हम ग्रुप संख्या 14 अपने विषय आज़ाद हिंद फौज को आपके समक्ष प्रस्तुत करने जा रहे हैं और हमारे ग्रुप संख्या 14 में सम्मिलित सदस्यों के नाम जेबा खातून, शाहजहां, आफिया कामरेज, रश्मि कुमारी सिन्हा और पूजा कुमारी है। आज़ाद हिंद फौज भारतीय इतिहास में होने वाली एक ऐसी घटना थी जिसने अंग्रेजों की नींव हिलाकर रख दी। आइए आज़ाद हिंद फौज के बारे में विस्तार से जानते हैं। आज़ाद हिंद फौज अथवा इंडियन नेशनल आर्मी का गठन एक ऐसे समय किया गया जिस दौरान द्वितीय विश्व युद्ध चल रहा था। विश्व युद्ध के दौरान जब जापानियों ने मलिया और साउथ ईस्ट एशिया पर कब्जा कर लिया तो बहुत सारे भारतीय सैनिकों को बंदी बनाया गया, जिसमें कैप्टन मोहन सिंह भी थे। कैप्टन मोहन सिंह ने जापान द्वारा युद्धबंदी बनाए गए सैनिकों को संगठित करके INA की स्थापना का विचार पेश किया, जिसके फलस्वरूप मार्च 1942 में टोक्यो में भारतीयों की कॉन्फ्रेंस बुलाई गई और उन्होंने इंडियन इंडिपेंडेंस लीग की स्थापना की। इसके बाद बैंकॉक में जून 1942 में कॉन्फ्रेंस हुई, जिसमें रास बिहारी बोस को लीग का अध्यक्ष चुना गया और यही आज़ाद हिंद फौज के गठन का निर्णय लिया गया। लेकिन इसी समय जापानी सरकार और कैप्टन मोहन सिंह के अधीन भारतीय सैनिकों में मतभेद उत्पन्न हो जाता है, जिसके परिणाम स्वरूप कैप्टन मोहन सिंह को गिरफ्तार कर लिया जाता है। इस प्रकार पहली गठित हुई INA का कार्यकाल 1942 में फरवरी से दिसंबर तक रहा। आज़ाद हिंद फौज का दूसरा चरण तब प्रारंभ होता है जब सुभाष चंद्र बोस जर्मनी से जापान नियंत्रण वाले सिंगापुर पहुंचे और पहुंचते ही जून 1942 में टोक्यो रेडियो से घोषणा की। इस घोषणा ने रास बिहारी बोस को काफी प्रभावित किया तथा रास बिहारी बोस ने 4 जुलाई 1943 को आज़ाद हिंद फौज का नेतृत्व सुभाष चंद्र बोस को सौंप दिया। 21 अक्टूबर 1943 को सुभाष चंद्र बोस ने सिंगापुर में स्वतंत्र भारत की अस्थायी सरकार अर्थात आज़ाद हिंद सरकार की स्थापना की, जिसे प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी ने अखंड भारत की सरकार कहकर संबोधित किया।
इसके पश्चात जापान ने अंडमान व निकोबार द्वीप इस अस्थायी सरकार को सौंप दिए। सुभाष चंद्र बोस उन द्वीपों में गए और उनका नया नामकरण किया। अंडमान का नया नाम शहीद द्वीप तथा निकोबार का स्वराज्य द्वीप रखा गया। स्वाधीनता के लिए संघर्ष आजाद हिंद फौज के सबसे बड़े प्रयासों में से एक है। जब नेताजी ने कुछ ही महीनों में आजाद हिंद फौज में 3 लड़ाकू ब्रिगेडें खड़ी की, जिनके नाम थे महात्मा गांधी ब्रिगेड, जवाहरलाल नेहरू ब्रिगेड तथा अब्दुल कलाम आजाद ब्रिगेड। इसके अलावा रानी झांसी ब्रिगेड जो महिला शक्ति की परिचायक थी। यही वह दौर था जब नेताजी ने 21 मार्च 1944 को दिल्ली चलो का नारा दिया, जिसके पश्चात आजाद हिंद फौज का हिंदुस्तान की धरती पर आगमन हुआ। इसके अतिरिक्त 22 सितंबर 1944 को शहीदी दिवस मनाते हुए सुभाष चंद्र बोस ने एक प्रसिद्ध घोषणा की, तुम मुझे खून दो, मैं तुम्हें आज़ादी दूंगा। आजाद हिंद फौज पूरे जोरों शोरों से अंग्रेजों से लोहा लेती रही, परंतु इसी बीच अंग्रेज अपनी सेनाओं को फिर से तैयार करने में सफल हो गए और उन्होंने जवाबी हमले किए। आजाद हिंद फौज ने भारी जनहानि की कीमत पर साहसिक लड़ाई लड़ी, लेकिन इसी दौरान द्वितीय विश्व युद्ध का पासा पलट गया तथा जापान ने आत्मसमर्पण कर दिया। इसके बाद आजाद हिंद फौज अपने बल पर टिकी नहीं रह सकी। ऐसे में नेताजी को टोक्यो की ओर पलायन करना पड़ा और कहते हैं कि एक हवाई दुर्घटना में उनका निधन हो गया। नेताजी के निधन की सूचना के साथ ही आईएनए का अंत हो गया। इसके पश्चात शुरू होता है अंग्रेजों द्वारा आजाद हिंद फौज के विरुद्ध वह जवाबी कार्रवाइयां, जिसने देश की जनता को आजाद हिंद फौज के समर्थन में एकजुट कर दिया। और इसकी शुरुआत होती है नवंबर 1945 ईस्वी में, जब आजाद हिंद फौज के गिरफ्तार सैनिकों एवं अधिकारियों पर अंग्रेजी सरकार ने दिल्ली के लाल किले में झूठा मुकदमा चलाया और फौज के मुख्य सेनानी कर्नल सहगल, कर्नल ढिल्लो एवं मेजर शाहनवाज खां पर राजद्रोह का आरोप लगाया। इसके साथ ही लाल किले में आईएनए के सैनिकों के विरुद्ध लगभग 10 ट्रायल्स भी किए गए और इसी कारण इन्हें रेड फोर्ट ट्रायल्स भी कहा जाता है। इस निर्णय के खिलाफ पूरे देश में कड़ी प्रतिक्रिया हुई। आम जनमानस भड़क उठे और अपने दिलों में जल रहे मशालों को हाथ में थामकर उन्होंने इसका विरोध किया। साथ ही लोगों ने नारे लगाए, लाल किले को तोड़ दो, आजाद हिंद फौज को छोड़ दो। अंततः हालांकि आईएनए असफल हो गया, परंतु इसकी असफलता में भी जीत छिपी हुई थी। बहुत सारे संघर्ष और विवादों के बावजूद भी आजाद हिंद फौज ने भारत की स्वतंत्रता में दिए योगदानों के कारण न केवल सम्मान हासिल किया, बल्कि भारतीयों के मन में एक अमिट छाप भी छोड़ी थी। यही कारण है कि आजाद हिंद फौज के गुमनाम शहीदों की याद में सन 1995 में सिंगापुर की राष्ट्रीय धरोहर परिषद ने इंडियन नेशनल आर्मी की बेहद खूबसूरत स्मृति पट्टिका उसी ऐतिहासिक स्थल पर स्थापित कर दी। आइए अब हम अपने अन्य विषयों की तरफ बढ़ते हैं।
The Rani of Jhansi Regiment was the women's regiment of the Indian National Army, the armed force formed by the Indian nationalists in 1942 in Southeast Asia with the aim of overthrowing the British Raj in colonial India. It was one of the female combat regiment of the Second World War, all the sides, led by the Captain Lakshmi Swaminandam. The unit was raised in the July 1943 with volunteers from the experienced Indian population in Southeast Asia. The unit was named the Rani Jhansi Regiment after Rani Lakshmi Bai, Rani of Jhansi, a revered Indian queen and freedom fighter. On 16 January 1942, an independence league was formed in Kerala, Lampur, and Indian women in Southeast Asia worked hard for the cause of India's freedom. In March 1943, a women's section of the league was started and Indian women in Malaya, Thailand and Burma were enlisted as volunteers. M.K. Chimdam was elected chairman and Miss Saraswati as secretary of the women's section, Indian Independence League, Singapore. Dr. Lakshmi Swaminandam was appointed secretary at the headquarters. On 9 July 1943, Subhash Bose, the supreme commander of INA, addressed a meeting and his call of women shared the burden of the battles for the freedom brought a new spirit into the movement. The regiment was to become a part of INA. Some of the women who joined it had their husband in the INA, but the majority were young girls. Some even ran away from their homes to join the regiment in January 1944. The regiment had 2 divisions, a fighting section and the nursing division. Out of the training received was similar in both women of the regiment, dressed in soldiers' informs. There was no distinction between the women's regiments and the men regiment of the INA. The women were highly disciplined and prepared for war. By 1944, the regiment numbered 1,000 women spread over three campuses at Singapore, Bangalore, and Rangoon. The first batch left for Purnima in early 1945, but the members of the Jhansi regiment could not take part in actual fighting as the Indian National Army was elected at the time. After the war, Lakshmi Swaminandam, who was the commander of the Jhansi regiment and disintegrate in colonial, refused to surrender the British. Even when the Indian National Army collapsed, she was captured and sent to Rangoon jail, while most of the girls were sent away to Singapore from Rangoon, and the Jhansi regiment was disbanded. Although women suffered greatly during the struggles for independence, many felt elected to have been part of that struggle during the quiet Indian Hamets. Thus, it was made obvious that at a time when India was a crucial wartime base for the British, neither non-violence demonstration nor sporadic sabotage stood by the real chance of the overthrowing the Raj, but they provoked the British authority into widespread use to repression moral of the British rule and that of the war effort itself. India's its team sacrificed their lives or war repression whole hereditary in the ostensibly anti-fascist war, while they were being denied basic civil liberties in their own country. The Quiet Indian Movement served to demonstrate that the integrations of the Raj had unit nationalists of the very different political natures. When the British cabinet visited India, there was a mass abuse of the Indian woman demanding freedom.
Our topic is student role in national movement. The youth and the educated section of our society, therefore students did a lot to attain independence. Students gave wings to movement by that they also result is affirmative. Students formed various political parties to support national movement. Schooling became an important place for political and cultural battles. They stood against casteism, untouchability, and many other bad evils of the society. They helped a lot of people to build national unity. The Student Scientific and Historical Society established Dadabhai Naroji in 1848. This provided a platform to the student to raise their voice, and this began with the first strike of students at the King Edward Middle College, opposing the discriminatory policies as practice of English against Indians. Between 1906 to 1918, it was at the peak. Quit India movement got largest support of students. Students felt their school and started participating in national movements. In 1936, All the Indian Students Federation established support the Indian National Congress in its struggle. Future of our nation is always decided by the youth. They gave the threat competition to Britishers and achieved the aim. We can say that the youth of today are leaders of tomorrow. Thank you.
V Group 17, Tahura, Kehkashan Firdos, Azra Maria, Kirti Yadav, Ayushi Singh are presenting the role of institution in Indian national movements. As we all know that institutions have played very important role in the time of Indian freedom struggle. There are several institutions which have a great role in national movement. Here are four of them. First one is AMU. Aligarh Muslim University was established by Sir Syed Ahmad Khan as Muhammad Anglo-Oriental College in 1875. The Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College became Aligarh Muslim University in 1920. The Aligarh Muslim University Students' Union is the university-wide representative body for students. Mahatma Gandhi was the first one of be given a lifetime membership of the union. Many of the notable alumni of the university took part in the freedom struggle, including Raja Mahendra Pratap Singh and Maulana Ubaidullah Sindhi, Captain Abbas Ali. Second one is Queen Mary College. The college is one of the earliest known women's college in the city of Chennai and was also a place where some of the first women freedom fighters organized. According to a piece by Anna Varki in Madras Musings, as a student, she remembers that the principal had made a huge V sign on their front lawn, but the pro Quit India movement students went and dug up the sign and scattered it. The members of the movement frequently cut classes and would be seen standing in front of Igmore Chief Presidency Magistrate Court yelling slogan like Inqilab Zindabad. Third one is Vidyasagar College. The establishment of Vidyasagar College was a landmark moment in the political history of India. It was founded in the year 1872 by Pandit Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, the torchbearer of the Indian Renaissance. The establishment of the college was seen as the first ever step taken by the Indians to free themselves from the clutches of the British rule. The sole motive behind establishing the college was to provide affordable higher education to a score of underprivileged students and to promote patriotic zeal among youngsters. Due to its favorable political climate and larger political dream, the college played a crucial role in shaping young minds to fight for the freedom struggle. Last one, Banaras Hindu University. Banaras Hindu University was created under the Parliamentary Legislation BHU Act 1915. It played a stellar role in the independence movement and has developed into the greatest center of learning in India. It has produced many great freedom fighters and builders of modern India and has immensely contributed to the progress of the nation through a large number of renowned scholars, artists, scientists, and technologists who have graced its portal. In the brief, institution was the center for political debates during the freedom struggle and several students and teachers of the colleges even went to prison following their participation in the movement. Thank you.
National leader. So our first national leader is Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. He was the first Prime Minister of India. Jawaharlal Nehru was born on 14th November 1889. He was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 11 times. He penned 146 letters to Indira Gandhi that later formed his book Glimpses of World History. He was the first person to hoist the national flag at the Red Fort in 1947. He was the first Prime Minister of the External Affairs in independent India. His fondness for high-collared jackets popularized the Nehru jacket as a fashion icon. Jawaharlal Nehru played a vital role in setting up the Election Commission of India. Jawaharlal Nehru wrote Discovery of India during his imprisonment in 1942. Now we move to our next leader, that is Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar. Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar was the father of the Indian Constitution. Bhimrao Ambedkar was a jurist, economist, politician and a social reformer, died on December 6, 1956. He was the principal architect of the Constitution of India. Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar served as an independent India's first law minister. He campaigned against untouchability and discrimination of Dalit, women and labor. In 1956, he converted to Buddhism, initiating mass conversion of the Dalits. Our next leader is a famous politician, Shama Prasad Mukherjee. Shama Prasad Mukherjee was the founder of Bharatiya Janasangh, which later evolved into Bharatiya Janata Party (BJP) in 1951 after parting ways with Nehru. He started his political career in 1929 by becoming a member of the Bengal Legislative Council. He joined Hindu Mahasabha in 1939
to take up the cause of Hindus. Shama Prasad Mukherjee was a vice chancellor of the University of Calcutta. He was opposed to the decision of grant special status to Jammu and Kashmir. In 1953, he visited Kashmir where he was arrested. Jayaprakash Narayan, he is also known as People Leaders, led the opposition against Indira Gandhi in the 1970s and called for a total revolution. He joined Congress at the invitation of Nehru. Many of today's leaders, Lalu Prasad, Nitish Kumar, Ram Vilas Paswan, Sharad Yadav, are JP's acolytes. He won the Ramon Magsaysay Award in 1965 for public service, awarded Bharat Ratna in 1999, and he died on October 8, 1979. Our next leader is Eminent Roy. Eminent Roy began his career as a militant political activist and left India in 1915 to organize an insurrection against the British. He met Lenin in 1920 and went on to become an international ranking communist leader. He moved away from Marxism to become an exponent of the philosophy of radical humanism. He suggested Constituent Assembly for India for the first time in 1934. Eminent Roy was the founder of the Communist Party of India, and Eminent Roy passed away in January 26, 1954.
We, the group number 19, is going to present a PPT on the topic The Making of the Indian Constitution. There are 5 members in this group, namely Maliha Khan, Gargi, Diksha Pandey, Simran Dalal, and Arya Srivastav. Before build an understanding over the topic, let's understand the Constitution of India. In very simple sentence, the Constitution of India is a set of rules and regulations that guides how a country, state, or other political organizations work. The present constitution was framed by the Constituent Assembly of India set up under Cabinet Mission Plan of 16 May 1946. This was composed for the purpose of drafting a constitution and it became effective on 26 January 1950. It took nearly 2 years, 11 months, and 118 days to finish the constitution, and after so many deliberations by 308 members of the assembly. And from that day onwards, India became Republic of India. Let's understand the background and framing of the constitution. So, the roots of constitution lies in capturing of substantial administrative power in 1765 by East India Company. East India Company took total administrative control by gaining right of taxation in Bengal after the Battle of Plassey and unified control over the whole of India from single center in Calcutta. They ruled over India for 200 years and finally faced the popular resistance of Revolt of 1857, and from onwards the Constitution of India took its shape. The Indian Council Act 1861 was set up where Indians could be appointed to the separate council to assist the Governor General in making laws. The Indian Council Act 1892 and 1909 increased the size of council and gave the Legislative Council the power to ask questions, and Government of India Act 1919 introduced diarchy. So, the process of making of our Indian constitution began many decades before India got its independence. The Constitution of India was first drafted by Motilal Nehru in 1928. The legislature that the British had introduced were weak and the voting rights were not given to everyone. The Indian lawmakers had learned from the experiences during the colonial rule and utilized all this while writing the constitution. Many of the institutional details were borrowed from the colonial laws like the Government of India Act 1935. The drafting of Indian Constitution was done by the Constituent Assembly. It held its first meeting on 9 December 1946 and reassembled as Constituent Assembly for divided India on 14 August 1947 under the chairmanship of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar.
The struggle for independence was thus over by 15 August 1947, but the attainment of independence was not an end itself. The first task undertaken by independent India from colonial rule of British was framing of the new constitution. As Dr. Rajendra Prasad, our first president, was elected as permanent chairman, the draft constitution was published in January 1948. The people of India were given 8 months to discuss and the draft and propose amendments. The draft constitution was considered for 114 days. The new constitution of India was adopted by the Constituent Assembly on 26th November 1949 and signed by President, which came into effect finally on 26th January 1950. Then, the Constitution, which is a set of basic written rules, was accepted by all people. The Constitution in its current form consists of one preamble, 25 parts containing 448 articles and 12 schedules. Originally, the Constitution of India contained 395 articles divided in 22 parts and 8 schedules. Let's understand the borrowed features of the Indian Constitution. Okay, it is true that the Indian Constitution is a bag of borrowings which had borrowed some features, but it was drafted according to the historical perspective, geographical diversity, cultural and traditional characteristics of India. And the chairman of drafting committee, Dr. Ambedkar, had rightly said, as to the accusation that the draft constitution has reproduced a good part of the provision of Government of India Act 1935, I make no apologizes. There is nothing to be ashamed of in borrowing. It involves no plagiarism. Nobody holds any patent rights in the fundamental ideas of a constitution. Then, from United States, India borrowed the feature of preamble, written constitution, federal structure of the government, fundamental rights, independence of judiciary, function of the president and vice president, and removal of the Supreme Court and High Court. From UK, we borrowed the features of nominal head, that is president, designation of the prime minister, cabinet system of minister, bicameralism, single citizenship, parliamentary form of government, and speaker in the Lok Sabha. From Russia, we borrowed the features of 5-year plan and fundamental duties, and so on from others' constitution also. So now understand the salient features of constitution. Indian constitution is one of the most admired constitution in the world that was enacted after ransacking all the known constitution of the world at that time. It was written in the two languages, that is both in Hindi as well as in English. In English, it was written by a calligrapher namely Prem Bihari Raizada, and in Hindi by Gopal Krishna Vidya. In the beginning, there is a preamble which signified its ideals, that is, justice, equality, secularism, individual dignity, fraternity, national unity, and aspiration of Indian people. Indian constitution provides citizens to have a form of government which is of the people, by the people, and for the people. People had to elect their own representatives. It has a provision of 6 unique fundamental rights granted to the citizen, and government cannot take away any of these rights by unlawful laws, that is, right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural educational rights, and right to constitutional remedies. So, who were the makers of Indian Constitution? The date 9 December 1946 holds immense importance as it was the day when the Constituent Assembly met for the first time in the Constitution Hall of the Indian Parliament, New Delhi. Though the first row of the hall was embraced by notable personalities such as Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Acharya J.B. Kirpalani, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Srimati Sarojini Naidu, Sri Hare Krishna Mehtab, Pandit Govind Vallabhbhai Pant, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Sri C. Rajgopalachari, and among all the notable members, a special mention of drafting committee headed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who is known as the father of our Indian Constitution. He was also a jurist, economist, politician, and social reformer, and served independent India's first law minister. Lastly, the Indian Constitution has gone through a great amount of research on and above that the borrowings from other constitution to make the present Indian Constitution, and hence the Indian Constitution came into force after a huge period. The responsibility lies on not only the jurists and policy framers but also the citizen of the country to work in a harmonious manner for the development of this country. Thank you so much.
प्रिय दर्शकों, आप सभी को तुषिता भंडारी की ओर से प्यार भरा नमस्कार। दरअसल हमने 1857 नहीं देखा, जलियांवाला कांड नहीं देखा, जेल व फांसी के तख्ते नहीं देखे, हमने नहीं देखी लाशों से भरी रेलगाड़ियां। हमने सिर्फ पढ़ा और सुना है उनके बारे में, और हम बस भारत को दुनिया के नक्शे में लकीरों से बंधा देखकर खुश होते हैं। आशा है कि भारतीय स्वतंत्रता संग्राम की विषय वस्तु पर बनी इस वर्चुअल प्रदर्शनी की यात्रा आपको इस आजादी के वास्तविक मूल्य का एहसास कराने में सफल रही होगी। जय हिंद।